please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
It's a third of a percent higher. 10,650 is where the market's opened.
We have put all concentrated bets on either HFCs or life insurance companies or large banks.
Finance ministers of various states are expected, or they are in a meeting right now as I speak to you on the issues related to the terms of reference of 15th Finance Commission.
An emerging market, especially Asia emerging market phenomenon. The dollar strength has put pressure on several currencies.
The market is going up. We have the tailwind, of course, of global cues. So all in all, it's looking like a good afternoon.
Today was a day of high beta, and that was visible in the mid-cap side as well.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, if I talk about some of the key results reactions today, then of course the stars of the afternoon definitely were Exide.
Positive global and local cues lift the Lal Street. Nifty gains nearly 100 points to end above 10,700. Sensex reclaims 35,000.
Indian sovereign bonds rally after the Reserve Bank of India announces a surprise buyback of bonds worth 10,000 crore rupees. PSU banks and NBFCs cheer. The move, rupee hits a 15-month low.
ICICI Bank leads the rally on the Nifty and the Nifty Bank ahead of its earnings. Stock surges over 2%, even as the street expects asset quality to worsen. Bank CEO Chanda Kochar is set to speak to the media for the first time since the controversy surrounding loans to Videocon.
Pharma stocks stumble in trade. Lupin, Glenmark and Dr. Reddy's are the key laggards. Wockhardt slides 7% after posting yet another quarter of losses.
Metals shine in trade. The index gains 2%, led by SAIL, Jindal Steel and Hindalco. Well, those were the top 5 headlines from the day's trading action. Hello and welcome to Markets Today. Talk Back, the show where we tell you all about the ups and downs and the excitement of 8 hours of trading in just 5 headlines, just simplifying it for you. I'm Lata Venkatesh. With me, Ekta Batra. Hi, Ekta.
Hi, Lata. Absolutely. Well, over the next 30 minutes, we will be discussing those top 5 market headlines, and our experts will be answering all of your stock queries as well. Joining in this evening to answer all of your queries, we have Dipan Mehta, member of BSE and NSE on the fundamentals, and technical expert Ashwini Gujral. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining in. But before we come to you, well, Lata, the markets actually fared very well today. We had all of the indices which were in the green, good advance decline ratio.
Yeah, the way it came across as across the board buying, it looked like somebody was in on the Karnataka polls. It had that kind of encyclopedic buying, so to speak. In particular, of course, the banks did very well, and that was easily explained. The Reserve Bank announced on Friday that it will be buying bonds in what is called an OMO, or open market operations purchase. So that was exactly the support the bonds needed. Bonds rose between a little over 1 rupee, no matter which bond you picked, and that means yields fell. So that would be obviously a mark-to-market gain for PSU banks and very good for NBFCs. But this rally was beyond that. Even metals rose. That was perhaps explained by the fall in the rupee. Normally, when the rupee falls by about 0.4, 0.5%, the bond market, the equity markets wobble a bit. But this time around, that was not the case. They took it positively. Metals which land on Indian soil will be expensive. Good for domestic metals. So the spin was entirely positive today. No matter what news you gave, the market was willing to look at it positively. That's about all we can say. How far this goes, we can't tell. But for the moment, everything you touch seems good for the bulls. What did you make of the stock-wise movement?
Well, I hope it isn't the Midas touch, Lata. But nonetheless, like you mentioned, it was a good session for us. So a lot of the banks actually rallied. So ICICI Bank ahead of its numbers, Axis, State Bank of India, all of them went home in the green. We had metal stocks which gained as well. So Hindalco, Tata Steel, all of these stocks were in green terrain. GAIL and M&M also very good going on both these stocks. GAIL was the top gainer on the Nifty. In terms of losers, it was pharmaceutical stocks all the way. So Lupin, Dr. Reddy's, Cipla, TCS, TCS, Techem, all of these stocks lost out quite considerably in today's trade. From the broader markets, PC Jewelers, which was up in double digits again. We had Wockhardt, which was weak post numbers, and something like an Ujjivan, which declined, and Exide, which reacted positively to its numbers. So quite an exciting session from the broader markets.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's now invite our guests and first start with Ashwini. Ashwini, the Q4 earnings aren't showing all that compelling a reason for the markets to rise, and yet we saw a very good rally today. What's your sense in terms of where the Nifty is headed from here on?
Well, today the Nifty actually broke out of this range of 10,600 to about 700, and the leadership came back. I think somewhere the Karnataka election rally has started. Banks did well. ICICI Bank closed in on the highs of the day. So with banks and Reliance both doing well, chances of a further upside are fairly bright. But that may mean that there may not be a post-Karnataka rally, because a lot of it is likely to get priced in the next 3-4 days.
All right, we'll take that. Let's also get some fundamental opinion. We spoke to Ajay Srivastava earlier today on the same issue. Here's what Ajay had to say.
I think gradually what is sinking in is that substantial re-rating of earning is not taking place. And I think if the base effect moves up, you will see growth rate petering out in the next quarter, which is why I said that there's no compelling case to buy. We have put all concentrated bets on either HFCs or life insurance companies or large banks. We have, I think, barely one company or two companies in the NBFC space is our entire holding of NBFC space, and those two are which are diversified into portfolio management, into equities, into placement, into investment banking, into asset reconstruction. So we have looked at those two companies only for a space. Pure lending, we have just walked out of the entire propositions.
Okay, so that's the opinion coming in from Ajay Srivastava on the fundamentals. But on to the second headline of the day. Indian sovereign bonds rally today. This is after the Reserve Bank of India announced a surprise buyback of bonds worth 10,000 crores. Bond yields fell close to 15 basis points on the rally. PSU banks and non-banking finance companies surged, cheering this move. Well, Lata, you've been tracking this entire development since the start. What does it mean?
Well, the Reserve Bank and the government have been throwing everything possible at the bond market to make it rally somehow or the other, or at least to stop it from falling. This one has worked for the moment. The Reserve Bank said on Friday it will buy bonds, 10,000 crore of them, on May 17th. And today, almost a rupee or more on any bond you touched. I mean, the prices went up, so the yields fell on the 10-year itself. Actually, the opening rates were 7.5859 compared to 7.75 on Friday. So that's obviously significant mark-to-market gains if the rise continued. And for NBFCs, it will mean they can borrow more cheaply from the wholesale market. So both those PSU banks and NBFCs had a good day.
Okay, well, we have a query now. In fact, viewer Mukundan has SMS'd us with a query on Andhra Bank. He has 375 shares of the bank and is holding them since the IPO. He's a long-term investor, and should he sell or hold? So, long-term investor coming in. Dipan, let's get your opinion on this. Andhra Bank holding since IPO. What is your opinion? Do you think that maybe cashing out is a good option, putting it in private banks? What would you recommend?
Well, I think he's had a massive opportunity loss over here by holding on to Andhra Bank shares. It's been an underperformer. Many other private sector banks have done far better, and even though it's he has been losing out on the not buying into private sector banks, even at this point it may make good sense to switch out of Andhra Bank into any of the blue chip private sector banks. We have seen good numbers coming through from Yes Bank, I think very impressive numbers, and lower NPAs, as well as less amount of fear as far as divergences with RBI are concerned, and could see a re-rating of the price earning multiple over there. So I would advise a switch out from Andhra Bank into any of the private sector banks. Top picks remain IndusInd, Yes Bank, Kotak, HDFC. I think any of these should suffice. And even from this point going forward, I think these banks will outperform Andhra Bank and would be better off maybe 2-3 years from now.
Oh, okay. Fair point. Private sector banks done well. Though, very quickly, Deepan, if I can ask you my own question on Vijaya Bank. The results looked good. Slippages have increased, but overall GNPA not much.
See, you will have an occasional good number coming in from a private sector, from a public sector bank, could be a Vijaya Bank, could be an Andhra Bank or SBI. But then these are not long-term great stories, secular structural growth stories for investors to invest in. At some point of time, you always are fearful that some negative surprise could come through. In any case, they are losing market share at the expense of NBFCs and private sector banks. There are constraints of capital. Overall, the kind of quality of service which they offer is not the very best, and they do not have the benefit of other subsidiary businesses like, say, broking or investment banking or mutual funds or NBFCs, which some of the other banks have. So I would say in the banking sector, there is only so much of money that you can allocate, maybe 25-30% of your portfolio, and you don't want to fritter away that allocation into some of the PSU banks or the smaller banks. The larger banks, the HDFCs, IndusInd, Yes Bank, are still showing decent growth rates. They are able to maintain anywhere from 17-18% to 25% type of growth rates and offer a good compounding opportunity. So most of the money allocated in your portfolio for the banking sector should be in large size private sector banks or NBFCs, and you can certainly trade in the PSU banks depending upon news flow, price volume action, looking at the base effect of what the last quarter numbers were, but then that's trading and it's not long-term investing.
Okay, all right, Dipan. So that's on banks. But Ashwini, your general sense in terms of the Nifty Bank, which actually picked up pace, what would you recommend on that index itself as well as specific bank stocks?
See, again on Nifty Bank, the stronger banks like HDFC Bank or IndusInd Bank, they didn't do too well. But the laggards, which are PSU banks, Axis, ICICI, they did very well. So maybe this leg of the move will be led by all of these laggards. One, maybe because of bond yield, and two, maybe they're getting out of their NPA situation. But overall, it's part of that Karnataka election rally. So 25, 900, 950 could be possible here.
Fair point. Well, with that, we stick with banks, but we go to the third headline of the day, ICICI Bank. That one led the rally on the Nifty and the Nifty Bank ahead of its earnings. The stock surged over 2%, even as the street expects asset quality to worsen. The bank's CEO, Chanda Kochhar, will be speaking to the media for the first time since the controversy broke out surrounding the Videocon loans. In fact, let's listen to what Elara Capital's Harindra Kumar told us about ICICI Bank earlier today.
The moot point about ICICI Bank that people have to understand that all the triggers have played out. So over the last 2 years, we all waited for the unlocking of the subsidiary valuation. The stock was at 300 rupees and people had bets of 400, 420. So now all of them are listed. So now the market is saying that the implied price of ICICI is potentially 150 rupees now and it is cheap. But at the same time, the ownership of the stocks have doubled actually, and without any impending triggers. So my worry is not about what the numbers it posts today. It's about how much of value derating or negative alpha that's created, and potentially if fund starts to sell off, the stock could correct.
Okay, that was the opinion from Elara Capital. We have somebody with a question on ICICI Bank. Viewer Pankaj Kumar is calling us from West Bengal. He has a question on ICICI Bank. Kumar ji, kahiye aapka sawal?
हाँ, मेरे पास 400 शेयर है 283 में
जी। और आप लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टर हैं? आप लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टर हैं?
नहीं, मैं शॉर्ट टर्म इन्वेस्टर हूँ। मैं उसे होल्ड करूँ या निकल जाऊँ? आप
कितने में उससे खरीदे थे? 283. Okay. Well, Deepan, would you want to help him? He has bought it at 283, still small profit.
See, I think he's a short-term investor, and ICICI Bank seems to be on the upswing, and maybe if the numbers are decent, then you would have a follow-through rally made tomorrow as well. But from a long-term investment perspective, ICICI Bank is a sell, and you're better off switching from ICICI Bank into any of the other private sector banks I named in the earlier question. The reason is that although the NPA issue may gradually come under control, they are steadily losing market share. And if you look at the net interest income and as well as the fee-based income for both ICICI and Axis Bank, it is certainly trailing the likes of HDFC, IndusInd, Yes Bank, DCB, RBL by a huge margin. So even after the NPA problems have got resolved, they still have to deal with the growth and the competitive intensity and how they're going to take on some of the more nimble-footed and the more well-entrenched, so to speak, private sector banks and NBFCs. And I think that even after the provisioning costs come down, they will have challenges in terms of growing their net interest income and fee-based income. So keeping that in mind, we have a long-term kind of negative view on both ICICI and Axis Bank, unless there's a drastic change in the top management and the strategy, and they become what they were earlier when they started off. I think they lost the plot somewhere in the middle when they started lending to the corporates and built up huge amount of NPAs. At the same time, a lot of management time may have been spent in trying to resolve these NPAs, whereas some of the other banks have certainly taken lead and managed to grow their balance sheet far faster.
Okay, Pankaj ji, expert का कहना है कि आप अभी ICICI बैंक में एक बाउंस आ सकता है रिजल्ट्स के बाद, लेकिन आपको शायद उसे बेचना बेटर होगा. उनका मानना है कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स बेटर निवेश अपॉर्चुनिटी देते हैं. इंडसइंड, येस बैंक जैसे बैंक्स, छोटे बैंक्स जो ज़्यादा ग्रोथ दिखा रहे हैं, ये एक्सपर्ट का मानना है. Okay, we take a break on that note, but do stay tuned. There are more headlines coming from the markets and more questions that will be answered. Welcome back. Here with us on Markets Today, Talk Back, the show where we tell you all about the markets in just 5 headlines. And of course, answer all your questions. We have been speaking with Ashwini Gujral and Deepan Mehta, who are here to answer all your questions. We're through with 3 headlines. So now for the 4th headline of the day. Pharma stocks took a beating in trade today in an otherwise good day, mind you. The pharma index was down 0.5%, led by the likes of Lupin, Glenmark and Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. From the broader markets, Wockhardt ended the day over 7% in the red after posting another quarter of losses. Our resident expert, of course, is my co-anchor, Ekta. What went wrong?
Well, maybe the markets are spooked because Donald Trump is expected to make a speech when it comes to drug prices, Lata. Now, remember that this was actually scheduled to take place last week, but it got pushed into this week. So there's an expectation based on reports that it could be on the 11th of May. Now, nobody knows what exactly it could entail and the extent of drug price control that he could announce. So key Republicans, for example, are still not briefed on the speech. Now, separately, we do have a lot of US FDA audits which are taking place back home. So, for example, Lupin's Nagpur plant inspection began today as per sources. Indico Remedies API plant started in terms of an inspection, and even JB Chemicals, we understand their Panoli facility, though there is no confirmation from the company on that. Separately, Credit Suisse has also highlighted specifically on Lupin that there is a massive volume loss in their diabetes drugs, Fortimet as well as Glumetza. So that was an additional negative which came in. For Wockhardt, like you mentioned, from the broader markets, it was the top loser on the Nifty, from the broader markets, and it was a Q4 loss of 150 odd crores versus 170 odd crores. So the losses continue for that company, and that weighed down.
Oh yes, weighed, and how? But then Wockhardt has been punishing its investors for keeping the faith for some time now. We've got a caller on a drug stock. George Lobo is calling us from Mumbai with a question on Lupin. Yes, Mr. Lobo, your question?
Yeah, thanks, Lata.
Yeah, please go ahead. What's your question?
Yeah, my question is, I'm holding 2,000 shares for Lupin, which I purchased at 1,400.
Okay.
About 18 months ago. Now, the question is whether I should hold it or sell it, or should I average it? I'm a long-time investor.
Fair point. That's why you have kept the faith, although the stock has been halved. Well, Deepan, what would you advise Mr. Lobo?
Well, I think it's great that he's a long-term investor, but unfortunately the stock he picked for long-term investing is not ideal. There's a fair deal of challenges as far as large-cap pharma companies are concerned, and the kind of commoditization which is taking place in the pharma industry across the globe, and the kind of challenges which are there in the domestic market as far as competition and government pressure as far as pricing is concerned, means that pharma companies will have an extremely difficult terrain to traverse through over the next few years or so. So I would say that it's better to, I know it's a bit difficult to book the loss, but it's better to move out of Lupin, out of the entire pharma pack. You will get better returns in the banking, NBFCs, consumer-oriented sectors like automobiles or appliances, building material, entertainment. So there are many very good opportunities in the domestic focused businesses rather than pharma or IT. So I would say it's best to still book profits even at these levels, book losses rather even at these levels, and move on into some other stocks where there's an opportunity to recuperate those losses.
Okay, all right. Well, book your losses on Lupin. That's the advice coming in from our fundamental expert. But we have our last headline for today. It was a good day for the metal stocks. The metal index ended the day close to 2% in the green. The rally was led by the likes of SAIL, Jindal Steel, as well as Hindalco. We now have an SMS coming in. Suresh Nair from Kerala has called us, or SMS, I think. He has a query on Tata Steel. Mr. Nair? Okay, it's an SMS. All right. Ashwini, let's go to you on this one. What's your view on Tata Steel?
See, Tata Steel again, like other metal stocks, has completed a correction, and from here, I think easily you could see at least a 10% further upside on Tata Steel.
Okay, so that 620 is his purchase price, another 10%, he would be in the money. So Mr. Nair must please stay with that investment. Oops, with that, of course, actually, we have run out of time. Deepan and Ashwini, thank you very much for joining us with all those answers to our viewers' questions. And to all of you out there, thank you very much for watching this edition of Markets Today Talk Back.